Okay, fine. So what here we are discussing is we are discussing about FCFS scheduling algorithm. We are discussing the simplest version of FCFS scheduling algorithm, first come first serve scheduling algorithm, where we assume that all jobs arrive at time zero. These are our variables. This n PROC, it represents the number of process which the algorithm is going to deal. So this program can deal maximum 100 process. For each of the process, we need the burst time, so which will be stored in this array burst time. This will be taken as user inputs, and based on this, we have to calculate the waiting time for each of the process, and that will be stored in this array WT of 100. And also we have to calculate the turnaround time that will be stored in this array TT of 100. And also we need to calculate the completing time of each process that will be stored in the array CT of 100. Our objective is to calculate the average waiting time and average turnaround time. Hence, we need to calculate the sum of waiting time of every process. Hence, this sum underscore WT is initialized with 0, and sum underscore TT turnaround time is also initialized with 0. And average waiting time and average floating time, this is what we want to calculate. Just we declare these as, so this can be a floating point value, right? This sum may not be a float, hence it is declared as integer. And initially we are asking the user to enter the number of process, and that we are reading in n underscore process. And then for each of the process, we are asking the user to enter the burst time, and that is what this for loop does. It's very self-explanatory. Now for the first process, so the first process will be actually in the zeroth location of this array. I mean, burst time of 0, it contains the burst time of the first process, or you can say that burst time of the zeroth process. Okay, if there are 5 processes, we call it as zeroth process to fourth process. So that is our understanding. So for the zeroth process, then there is no waiting time at all. So WT of 0 is 0 because there is no waiting time, right? And what is the completing time of the zeroth process will be? The completing time of the zeroth process will be its waiting time. Its waiting time is 0 plus its burst time. Its burst time is available at zeroth location. Okay, and what is its turnaround time? Turnaround time, we know the formula for turnaround time is completing time minus arrival time. In our case, we assume that our arrival time is 0 for all the process, or if you want, you can declare a variable arrival time and you can assign with 0. So turnaround time for the zeroth process is CT of 0 minus 0. Now, now for the first process, we have calculated everything. I mean, for the zeroth process, we have calculated everything. We have calculated the waiting time, we have calculated the completing time, and also we have calculated the turnaround time. From this, we can calculate for the other processes. For calculating for the other processes, we are writing this for loop. For I is equal to 1, that is for from the first process to I less than n underscore PROC. We are not going up to n. If it is 5, we'll go up to 4 because we are going from 0 to 4, I plus plus. Now, what is the waiting time of the first process? Waiting time of the first process, how much time the first process should wait? The first process should wait. The waiting time of the first process will be equivalent to the waiting time of the zeroth process plus the burst time of the zeroth process. Okay. As long as the zeroth process is waiting, the first process should also wait. Obviously, zeroth process will not wait, right? But if you say as ith process, the waiting time of the ith process will be equivalent to the waiting time of the I minus 1th process plus the burst time of I minus 1th process. Okay. And what will be the completing time of ith process? The completing time of ith process will be how long it has waited. The ith process, how long it has waited plus its own burst time. And the turnaround time of ith process will be its completion time minus 0. Right. So now we got all the waiting time for all the processes in these variables. Okay. So this you should know. If you think of, you can understand this. It's I think it's not much difficult to uh, to visualize. See, the waiting time of the zeroth process is not going to wait. Now the first process, how long it has to wait? First process, it has to wait until the burst time of the zeroth process. But we want to generalize this because it should be applicable for all the processes. Hence, we add this Wt of I minus 1. So if you take the third process, how much time it should wait? It should wait. It should wait for the duration of the waiting time of the second process plus the burst time of the second process. Okay, so that's the intuition. Okay, and what is the completion time of the third process? The completion time of the third process will be the waiting time of the third process plus its burst time. How long it waits and what is its burst. And what is turnaround time? It's a straight cut like a formula. It's completing time minus arrival time. Here our arrival time is assumed at 0, so we give this 0. So with all this information, now we can calculate the total sum of waiting time. So we write another for loop here, and we sum of waiting time plus equal to waiting time of I, and sum of turnaround time plus equal to turnaround time of I. Once we got this sum of waiting time and turnaround time, we can calculate the average waiting time and average turnaround time by dividing by number of process. Then we can display it as a table or whatever format you want, like what's the average waiting time and average turnaround time. So this is about FCFS algorithm. So let me execute it. It's already compiled. Anyway, I'll compile again. GCC FCFS.c -o FCFS /FCFS. I'll take the problem which we have discussed in the class. This one, there are 3 processes. 2433, that is the burst time. So 3 processes. Zeroth process, burst time is 24, then 3, then 3. So the average waiting time is 17, average turnaround time is 27. So here we have average only. So as per the slides, we calculated only average waiting time, which is 17. That's correct, right? We have also discussed another version of the same problem where this P1 we are moving lost. That is the lengthy process we are moving lost. Okay, so it becomes 3324. Instead of 2433, it becomes 3324. P1 we are moving to the back to reduce the average waiting time. So let us discuss that version also. So now 3. So let us say that P0 is 3, P1 is also 3 burst time. For P2, let us make 24. Now the average waiting time is 3, turnaround time is 13. So that is what here average waiting time is 3. Okay. So that's it about FCFS. Let us discuss SJF. Here is the code for SJF. All these variables or all these variable declarations are quite same, right? But there is one more thing we are adding here. Process number we are adding, because in SJF shortest job first. So which is the shortest job that we have to find, and that one we are going to execute first, right? Okay, so we are going to identify the shortest job, and the shortest job is going to be executed first. So our order may change. Initially, whatever the input the user gave, in that the shortest job may not be first, but shortest job should be moved first. So we introduce one more variable which is called as process number. For every process we give a number. Say for example, initially 4th process has the shortest waiting time. Now we will move the 4th process to the first location of the array, but still we call that as 4th process only. Are you getting? Otherwise you cannot see the how the algorithm is producing the result, but still that process will be called as 4th process only, and that is the reason this p number we are maintaining. Other things are same. This n process, it represents the number of process. For each process now we give a process number, and burst time, it's an array which contains the burst time, waiting time to calculate the waiting time, tt to calculate the turnaround time, ct to calculate the completing time. So as usual, we ask the user to enter the number of process and we read that. And then we ask the user to enter the burst time of the each of the process and we take it. Once the see here itself we are providing the numbering for the process. So whatever the user gives the burst time first, right, that will be treated as zeroth process. Okay. So so initially we initially whatever the user gives input in that order we number. So the zeroth input whatever given by the user, that will be the zeroth process. First input given by the user will be the first process. Second input given by the user will be the second process, so on and so forth. Right. Now we are going to sort it. We are going to sort the burst time, this burst time array. This burst time array we are going to sort based on the value of the burst time. So while sorting, we are not only going to sort the burst time. When we sort the burst time, we will also rearrange this process numbers. So that for that we are using this loop. For I is equal to 0, I less than number of process I plus plus. For j equal to I plus 1, j less than number of process j plus plus. If burst time of I is greater than burst time of j. See here I is 0 initially, it is zeroth process, j is I plus 1, which means j is first process. We are checking whether the zeroth process burst time is greater than the first process burst time or not. If that is the case, it should not be allowed because the zeroth process should have the minimum burst time. Zeroth process should not have the higher burst time than any other process. Then we should swap. Then we should swap. So we are swapping if ith process burst time is greater than the burst time of jth process, then we are swapping ith process and the jth process. This is just as normal swap logic. T equal to burst time of I, burst time of I is equal to burst time of j, burst time of j equal to t. So we are not only swapping the burst time, we are also swapping the what you call. We are also swapping the appropriate that process number. So so t is equal to process number of I, process number of I is equal to j, and j equal to t. So when you swap the process, when you swap the burst time, accordingly the process numbers also should be swapped. Are you getting? Say now, say if P4 process is the smallest process, I mean smallest burst time, then P4 will come to the zeroth location, but still we will call it as P4 only. As it was moved to zeroth location, we won't call it as P0. So that is to ensure that we are maintaining this P number, and 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 that is the reason why we are doing this. Okay, fine. So after sorting, after swapping, after doing all this swapping and sorting based on the uh, shortest I mean based on the execution time, based on the burst time, then again we display all the process, we display all the process, its number and its burst time. So now the order will be changed. Like if fourth process is having the smallest burst time, then it will say that P4 will come first, P4 will come first and it burst number, right? If second process is the one which is having the next smallest burst time, then P2 will come there and its burst time, so on and so forth. Okay, fine. The rest of the logic, so once this sorting is done, no, the rest of the logic is similar to first come first serve, because this is a non-preemptive algorithm, right? It's not a preemptive algorithm. So now it's something like a first now it's something like a what you call the normal FCFS. So waiting time of zeroth process is will be zero. Here zero represents which process, whatever the process which is currently in zeroth location, which has the smallest burst time, and its completing time will be its waiting time plus burst time, and its turnaround time will be its own waiting time plus its burst time. But you can also calculate the turnaround time other way around, that is its completing time minus the, instead of this you can also use turnaround time is equal to ct of 0 minus 0, because here also we are assuming that all process arrives at time 0. We are not taking the input from the user like which process is arriving at what time, that we are not taking, right? Okay. Similarly, we calculate the waiting time, completing time and turnaround time for all other processes also using this loop. So once this is done, then we calculate the sum of waiting time, sum of turnaround time, and then we calculate the average waiting time and average turnaround time, and finally we display everything. Right. So let me execute this. GCC jf.c hyphen o jf dot slash sjf. So let us discuss this example. There are four processes, and these are the burst time 6, 8, 7, 3. Four processes 6, 8, 7, 3. So the process 3 is the one which has the shortest execution time. So it should then first 3, then 6, then 7 and 8. So the order is 3, 0, 2 and 1. Okay. So you can see here it is sorted P3, P0, P2, P1. After that we calculate all these things. So average waiting time is 7, turnaround time is 13. So yeah, it's 7. Okay. So that's it about this. So similarly, you are expected to implement priority scheduling and round robin scheduling. So round robin scheduling will be little tricky that you have to think of. Priority scheduling also, I am not asking you to implement the preemptive version. It's a non-preemptive version of that. Okay. So the deadline will be Saturday morning. I don't think it's a difficult task. It's compared to other tasks, whatever we have discussed. With that, I think it's very easy. Fine. If you have any doubts, you can ask. Okay. Otherwise, we'll quickly discuss the code for the lost lab assignment. So some partial code we have discussed. So this is where we are taking user input. This get CWD. This gets it will get the current working directory, and it will store in this buffer. And we are displaying that. Why we are displaying that? Because we are displaying that to give the prompt field. And this fgetters is to read the command from the user. So the user can type the command. It will read using stdin. It is from the standard input device. It reads maximum 100 characters and it will be stored in this variable cmd. Now we have one command called history command to display the history or whatever the commands which were previously used by the user. So once the user gives a command, we store in a file. For that, we are calling this function history. So this function will take care of that. So here is the function. Whatever the command you give, that will be available in this command. Okay. For example, if you give ls, then this command, this pointer will point to ls. Anything. It will also allow with spaces. Now we are opening this file history.txt. We are opening the file in append mode because we may want to add many commands. So after opening the file, we check whether this file pointer is null or not. If the file pointer is null, we say error and we exit. Otherwise, inside that file, we print fprintf fp. So fp is file pointer, percentage s, cmd. What is cmd? Whatever the pointer points, the pointer points to ls. So to that file, we just print ls and we close. So whatever the user gives, no, that command will be stored in that file. So that's the because we are going to use this file when we are using the history command. So that's the whole concept. And suppose if the user gives lsl command. So this parse part, I think we have already discussed the last class. I'm not going to explain it again. If the user gives lsl command, ls-l command, then it will call this function ls_l. Let us see the code for that. So that is the one which is little tricky. So this is ls-l. Here we are creating an pointer for directory. Dir represents directory, and we are creating some structure variables. All these are predefined structures. Structure directory entry. DRE entry represents directory entry. This is a predefined structure. For this, we are creating a pointer file. Structure stat. This is used to get the status of a directory. For this, we are creating a variable status. Structure password. For this, we are creating a variable pointer variable TF. Structure group. For this, we are creating a pointer variable GP. Now we are saying that directory equal to opendir. Opendir is a function which is used to open a particular directory. Opendir of dot. Dot represents the current directory. So when you say ls-l, you want to list the directory and the full information. -l represents full information of which directory, of the current directory. So dot refers to the current directory. Right? Then what we do now, this directory is a pointer. You can see directory is a pointer of type directory. Now this directory is pointing, this pointer is pointing to current directory. Now current directory contains, it may contains multiple files and multiple subdirectories. Now each and every directory you have to access. So we are writing a for loop or a while loop. We are writing a while loop while file equal to read directory. We are reading the content from the pointer. We are reading the content which is pointed by directory. So directory is pointing to multiple files and subdirectories. We are reading it one by one. How long we should read? Until it is not equal to null. So if there are 100 files, you should read this while loop will read for 100 times. Okay. So after, so say first thing we read, first whatever the content of inside the directory, maybe it may be a file. A directory contains what? A directory contain either a file or a subdirectory, nothing else. So whatever we read first, right? Whatever we read first, we read something. Okay. Again, we are doing this. So whatever we read first, that will be pointed by this file. Okay. Then we are doing this stat of dot numbers and status. Okay. So this is used to get the status. This is used to get the status of whatever we have read currently. This stat is a function. Again, dot represents the current directory. So basically dot represents the current directory. Here we are getting the status of the current directory. What is current directory? Current directory, is it a directory or a file? That's what we want to check first. Okay. So we do that here. Status dot stat mode and yes underscore ifmt. So what this will do? Basically, this is going to this is going to check whether, see if you recall, I'll just go out. I'll give ls-l. You can see now this ch1 is a directory. So at first you are getting D. So this D represents that this is a directory. Then this is read, write, execute option for the owner. Then read, no write option and execute option for the group. Read, no write option and execute option for the this is for others, right? Whereas if you take this client.c, this is not a directory, this is a file. So here what you are getting, just a hyphen. Wherever it's a directory, you will get D. If it is not a directory, you will just get a hyphen. Okay. And what is the root user and the root, what is the username? Okay. And what's the password? And what is the, this is not the password. It won't display the password, of course. It is your, there are two things. One is root user and another one is I guess your current directory. Okay. Or current directory or your home directory. And then the size of the file, how much, what is the size of this file? And then this is the date at which it is created. And this 1 represents hard link. This I think somewhere previously also we have discussed. Normally the hard link of any file will be 1 only. Sometimes it can be 2. If multiple, if this file is referred with 2 names, say there is only one file but it is referred with 2 names, then this number will be 2. Right. So with this understanding, let us see that code. Yeah, see there one is user ID, one is group ID. Yes, here we are getting, this is root is user ID, this is group ID. For what is the ID for the user, what is the ID for the group, right? Okay. See here currently, initially if you see this directory, we are opening the directory and then we say file equal to read directory. It means we are reading the content. We are reading the first content, whatever the first content we are reading. So now the focus is on the current first content. The first content can be either a file or a directory, right? So now our focus is on the first content. For that first content, we are checking whether it is a file or a directory, right? So to check that, we do this switch status.st mode. So this st mode, basically this st mode is a number. It's a number which specifies the details about the particular current directory or a file, right? So it is something like this. So it is something like this, say for example, what are the things there we have seen? If you take a particular file, if it is a file, you'll have underscore, or you'll have, yeah, you'll have underscore and then read, write, execute. This is for owner. Owner has read, write, and execute options. Owner can read the file, write the file, and execute on the file. And then group user, what they can do, they can read, say they cannot write, they can execute, say then others they can read, they cannot write, and they can execute, right? Now, so so if you see 1 2 3, totally there are 10 parameters are here. So these 10 parameters basically represents the status of a particular file. If this is a directory, instead if this is a directory, this will be like what? If this is a directory, then this will be D. Instead of or, it will be D. So now we want to know at this position whether it is D or R. At this position whether it is D or R. That's what we are going to check. So this S underscore IFMT, no. This S underscore IFMT is will be something like this. 1 0 0 0 0. Okay. So 1 followed by 9 zeros. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. That is, it doesn't bother about the owner privilege or group privilege or others privilege. It is only to find out whether this is a directory or a file. Okay. So this st underscore mode, it represents the full info in binary format. Okay. If say D, if it is a directory, D will be 1. Read access is allowed, then 1 1. Execute is allowed 1. Then for group, read is allowed 1. For group, execute is not, I mean write is not allowed 0 1 1 0 1. It will be like this, right? But we are bothered only for this directory currently. So we just perform AND of this. So when you perform AND of this, if the result is 1, if the result is 1, again that is checked with S underscore if it is a directory. Then we say that it is D. Otherwise, if it is, suppose if it is not a directory, then this will be 0, and the result of this also will be 0. Then we say that it is not a directory, it is a file. Then we just display a hyphen, right? So that is what this particular code does. The switch, that is what it does. Now similarly, you have to check other things also. This is only for checking the whether it is a directory or not. Similarly, so many other things are there, like we have whether read access is allowed for the user or not. Again, the logic is same. So if you want to check whether the read access is allowed for user, then that bit alone will be 1, remaining all will be 0. So this info is available in s underscore I or user. Okay, is I or represents read user. Is read access is allowed for the user or not? Again, whatever the for the status, with status only we are performing this bitwise AND. If it returns 1, then it means that read is allowed, otherwise not allowed. Similarly, we do for write access is allowed for the user or not, execute is allowed for the user or not, read is allowed for the group or not, write is allowed for the group or not, execute is allowed for the group or not, read is allowed for the others or not, write is allowed for the others or not, execute is allowed for the others or not, right? So up to this, it will only display up to this much. But this is alone is not enough. After this, we have to display the hard links, number of hard link. And that is available in this st underscore n link in the structure status. Okay, so I'll show you the structure later. So these are predefined structures. I mean, the structure name is stat, I guess. Yeah, structure name is stat. The structure variable is status. So for the current file, it will status.st underscore n link will give the what number of links. Typically, it will be 1. Okay. Similarly, get PWUID, user ID. This function, for this function, if you call status.st underscore UID, again, this is a structure variable. Then it will return the username. Then it will return the username. Right? It will return a username again as a structure. This TF is a structure. TF is a structure for password. So it will return the username as a structure. So that from there we can display the username. TF underscore PW name. Actually, it's a username. Similarly, this function get get group GID. So this will return the group ID status underscore stgid. If you pass this as an argument, it will return the group ID again as a structure, and that can be displayed. This structure has a member gr underscore name that contains the group name. Right? And the structure stat also contains a variable called st underscore size, which will give the size of the file. And then there is a structure called file also. There is a structure called file, which is a directory entry, which is the file is a structure of the directory entry. So that will give the file name d underscore name, which gives the file name or the directory name. And the time of the file created can be accessed by using ctime of status.st underscore yum time. Okay, so this is the code. So let us see those structures. So this is the structure for directory entry. The structure is this is the structure for directory entry. Here you can see structure directory entry. Basically, it contains these variables. We are using only this uh, d name. What is the name? So this structure we are using only to get the directory name or the file name, right? So it holds the directory name and the file name. Okay. So the other explanations are available here. So d name, this is a null terminated file name component. It's not only file name, it can be also a directory name. And this is the structure stat. So this is the one we used extensively. So this st underscore device, it represents device number. INO, it represents some inode number. We have not used all these things. We used this n link. N link represents number of hard links. We used this UID, user ID of the owner. GID, ID of the group ID of the owner, right? Size, st underscore size, total size of the file, right? So these are some of the things which we have used. Similarly, this is the structure password, which contains password name. So this password name, in the sense, it's the name of the user, and actual password, password UID, password, group ID, all these things. So I think we have used PWUID in this. Okay. Similarly, this is the structure for group, which contains these members: group name, group password, group GID, all these things. Fine. I guess this make directory we have discussed. Change directory. The code for change directory is quite similar to make directory. So for example, the user gives the command like this: cmd cdOS lab 4. This is the command given by the user, cdOS lab 4. Now this will be pointed by this pointer cmd. So cmd points what? Cmd points this cd space OS lab 4, and this thing is also there. The \n is also there, or a null character is there. So 0/0 strings generally they end with null character. Okay. Now we want to remove these extra things. This cd space should be removed. This null character also should be removed. Right? That's what we are first going to do. We are creating a character pointer p, some variable I. First we are finding the length of this. Length is equal to string length of cmd. So if you calculate this example, if you take typical example, its length is 10. So, but it is a generic algorithm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. These two things is counted as one character. So it's 10. And now we allocate space for p. Dynamic memory allocation. P is equal to character star c allog 5, size of character. We are allocating 50 locations, each of size 1 byte. This character is 1 byte. Now this cmd, as I already said, cmd should only point to OS lab. It should not point to cd space OS lab, and this null character also should be removed. What we are going to do for that? First we are writing a for loop. For I is equal to 1, I less than or equal to 3, I plus plus, cmd plus plus. So whenever you use cd command, first 3 characters we don't want, because first 3 characters command name. Already we know that this function is going to do that job, changing the directory. So this function is meant for that. So first we are making this 3 increments. So when you make the first increment, cmd will point to d space OS lab. When you do the second increment, cmd will point to space OS lab. When you make the third increment, cmd will point to OS lab/0. Now that's fine, but this /0 also we should remove. For that, what we are going to do? For that, we are using this string n copy function, which is available in C string.h header file. So this string n copy is used to copy first n characters from source string to destination string. So we are going to this is the source string. CMD is the source string. P is the destination string. From CMD, we are going to copy this many characters. How many characters? Length minus 4 characters. Why length minus 4? Because we calculated length at this point. Before incrementing CMD, we calculated length. Okay. So you can see here, length is at this point, length is 10. So before removing CD, we calculated length. That is, when we calculated length, it is like this: CD OS lab 4/0. So how many extra characters are there? 4 extra characters are there. 1, 2, 3, and this null character, including that 4. Right? So 4. So that we are doing length minus 4. So length minus 4 means 10 minus 4, 6. Which means we are going to copy only first 6 characters from CMD to P. So this is currently CMD. So first 6 characters means it will copy O, S, L, A, B, and 4. That's all. So it will ignore the /0. Are you getting? If you feel this as confusing, instead of writing this character, calculating the length thing, no. Instead of writing this here, you can write here. If you write here, okay. If you write here, length is equal to string length of CMD, then at this point, its length will be only first 3 characters already removed. So its length will be only 7. And you can clearly see that there is only one extra character, that is the null character. So that is the only thing we want to avoid. If that is the case, then we can write length minus 1. Are you getting? The concept is same. Fine. So once we have identified the exact directory name which is to be created, then just call this function chdir of p. That will change the directory. That's it. P is equal to null. So that's it about changing the directory. Removing the directory also pretty similar. So you want to remove some directory, you want to delete some directory. So initially, say cmd, you want to remove the directory OS lab 4, then cmd will point to, we give rmd os lab 4 /0, it will point. So as usual, we have to remove this rmd /0, all these we have to remove. So if you see, all these codes are similar. Int rm star p int I, we are calculating the length equal to string length of cmd. So if you calculate the length here, it is 1 2 3 sorry 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. I don't know what is the, maybe it's a lengthy string or what, I don't know. It's here I have written 13, but say let us calculate this length. RMD, remove 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11. Its length is 11. Yeah, it's rmdir. Okay, the actual command is rmdir. So hence we are doing, hence that length is 13, right? Otherwise the working mechanism is same. Okay, so it is not rmd, it is rmdir, remove directory. Okay, so rmdir. So now if you count 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13, right? Hence it is 13. Now this rmdir and this space, all these things we want to remove. So 6, so that we are running this for loop 6 times and we are saying cmd plus plus. When you do this, now cmd will be pointing to this OS lab /0. Again, we want to remove this null character. So we are doing, in this case, the extra characters are 7. So string copy p comma cmd length minus 7. Then we just call rmdir of p. This, or when you call rmdir of p, it will return some value, right? So it will return a pointer, and then we check whether not of rmd. That is, it will return 0. If it is successfully removed, it will return 0. So if it returns 0, then we say that the directory is removed. Otherwise, we say that unable to remove the directory. That's it about this. Environment we already discussed. This is the code for history. So history command user can give in two ways. Either user can give just history. If the user gives just history, the whole history should be displayed. I mean, all the commands should be displayed. If the user gives history 5, history space 5 or history space some number, then only the recent 5 commands should be displayed. Recent 5 commands, whatever the user gave, that should be displayed. So there are two ways of implementing here. Anyway, first we open the file history.txt in the read mode. We check whether, if it is not opened properly, then we say error. Then here we are creating a pointer, okay, because we want to read that particular commands from the file. P is equal to character star calloc 50 comma size of character. L is equal to string length of cmd. So string length of cmd is actual command. Now the command can be of two styles, either just history or history space some number. So that we are going to check here. So how we are going to check? If it is just a history, no, then you can count the length. Its length is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 plus 1. That null character also, if you include, it is 8 characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Including null character, it is 8. So if the length of this command is equal to 8, then it is normal history command. Otherwise, it is the second version of the history command, that is history space number. So that here we are checking, we are first calculating the length of the command. If length is greater than 8, then what we are doing, for I is equal to 1, I less than or equal to 8, I plus plus. So why we are doing this? Because we want to identify what is the number later, what is the number is there. Okay, so for example, if the command is something like this, history space 75, it means we need last 75 commands. Okay. So now currently CMD is pointing where? Currently CMD is pointing to H. So we want to make CMD to point to 75. So that we are running the for loop for 8 times and we are incrementing CMD. So when you increment CMD for the first time, it will point to I. When you increment for the second time, it will point to S. When you increment for the third time, T. Fourth time, O. Fifth time, R. Sixth time, Y. Seventh time, space. Eighth time, when you increment for the eighth time, it will point to 75. Now you are pointing to 75. That is fine. So that 75 alone, we want to take it in some other variable. Okay. And this 75 also, after that there is a null character. We don't want a null character, so that we are doing this L minus 9. So totally there are 9 extra characters, 8 characters before 75 and 1 null character after 75. So again string copy p comma cmd L minus 9, that we copy, and we say that argument equal to 1, because this 75 is treated as the argument for history command. So this is a history command with argument. Okay, if it is a history command without argument, then it is just a history, no numbers. Now this number, whatever the number you have taken, this number we want to convert it to integer. Here we have separated out the number, but still it is a string. So to convert it to an integer, we are using this function a to I, which converts the content pointed by p to int, and then we are storing it in number. Then what we do? And here we are running a for loop while read equal to get line of history. History points to that particular file. Ampersand length ampersand len. What is len? Len is initially 0, comma fp. So basically we are reading line by line from the file. So each line, whatever the length of each line, that will be stored in this len. So how long we are doing this? Until your read is successful. If the read is failure, then it will return -1. Right? And we are doing count plus plus. If argument is 0, we are just displaying it. If argument is 0, we are just displaying it. Right? If argument is 1, no. If argument is 1, then it is a different history command. Then we don't display. But we maintain this count. This count actually we are using for the second history command, right? So if this is the first style of history, if it is just history, then this while loop will do the job and it will display all the commands. But if it is a second style of history, then also this while loop will execute, but it won't display anything, because here we display only if arg is 0. Right? But still we know that how many commands are there that we are counting here. Now once again we rewind the file pointer. After coming out of this while loop, the file pointer will be pointing to the last location. We remind the file pointer to the first location. Then what we do, if argument is equal to 1, then we say that start equal to count minus num. Count represents number of commands in the file. Right? So if the number of commands is 100 and we need last 25 commands only, okay, then start is equal to count minus num, which will be 75. It means we need last 25 comments, 75 to 100. So to make the file pointer to move that to that location, so that we are doing this. Then what we do, then while read equal to get line of history, then now also we are reading, and we are using another variable count 2, which is also initially 0, and we are incrementing count 2. Now also we are reading from the beginning, but here we are checking if count 2 is greater than start. As long as count 2 is from 1 to 75, we won't display anything. Only if count 2 is greater than 75, starting from 76 only we will display. So that's what here it does. Okay, so I guess that's it. So let me execute. So this is ls-l. I don't know why it's showing error. GCC. Uh, I think I've changed the directory. Let me come out. Just a minute. Okay, I think the problem is with the history.txt. History.txt, because this only throws this error. Error, right? Let me comment that line and check. So this is the one which is, let me comment it. Okay, it's coming. So this is what I think that history is, there is something I have to check. Maybe that file is not here. Maybe something like that. Yeah, it contains the file history. Let me give some other name here. I will give history1. Where else we are using here history? Here also I'll give history1. Okay. Now I'll uncomment that. Yeah, it's working. Now it contains only one command. Our history will give only one command, right? Because it has only one command. We can give more command and then we can check mkda or okay. History. Now it gives all these things. Now I can give history 3. It will give last 3 comments. Okay. Yeah, that's it for today's session. So here the history that 7 is repeating, working in a different way, because here the implementation is different, right? Because this code is little different, but the one I uploaded in the LMS is different. Okay, whatever I have explained, that I have uploaded there. So here actually I implemented history 7 means it will display the 7th command alone. So that it is giving only one output. When we give history 2, it is giving only the second line, right? But for that you can refer that code. I think we can stop here. If you have any doubts, you can ask. Otherwise, we'll close the session. Yeah, Parameshwar, thanks for that. Now only I'm seeing this. Okay, fine then. Thank you.